everybody. How's everybody doing today? So when I was meditating today, I always ask God, I ask Source, how would you have me serve today? What would you have me share? And what was coming through really, really strongly today is to talk about the separation that we tend to experience in the spiritual community. So, I feel a little bit uncomfortable talking about this, which tells me I need to talk about it. And I also just want to preface and say, if something that I say doesn't resonate, I encourage you to just leave it. Leave it. Just because this is my perspective, my own experience. Hi, Sarah. How are you doing? Just because this is my own experience doesn't mean that it's going to speak directly to you. It doesn't mean that this is your truth. So this message may not resonate at all with you, and that's okay. I encourage you to just turn it off. Maybe at some point in time, you're going to feel called to come back to it. But if not, that's totally cool. And also, I also want to preface and say that we are all in our own unique individual journey. Our soul has made agreements and choice points as to when and how things are going to happen. So there's no right and wrong with where you're at in your journey. Where you are is exactly where you're supposed to be. And there's no rushing it. We're all going to be operating just at different places in our spiritual awakening and self-realization process. And we just need to honor that and not make where other people are wrong, right? So what I want to talk about is, so when we first spiritually awaken, where we are shifting out of thinking that life is happening to us and realizing that life is actually happening for us, that we are able to actually be the co-creators of our reality, that we are able to shift and reprogram our subconscious belief systems, work with energy to begin to create a different environment, begin to create a different experience. It is a very, very exciting time when our soul is awakening to kind of the greater truth of what we are and who we are, that we are here as souls having a human experience. And so when we wake up to that, it's just very exciting. And we end up going into a huge amount of taking in a lot of information. We just begin to navigate all of the information that's out there about the quantum field, about the angelic realm, about energy healing, about all of it. And we're taking it all in. And oftentimes, people that kind of felt like they didn't fully fit with the collective, oftentimes they're the ones that end up going through a spiritual awakening and fully immerse themselves in the spiritual community. And so what I'm saying is people that were maybe the misfits, that felt like the black sheep in their family, that were the rebels, that we're kind of resistant to the system. We're always kind of questioning things. Things didn't fully feel right. Didn't feel like they fully 100% fit in. And then when they go through a spiritual awakening, then they start to get to know their inners, get to know why they are the way they are. And a lot of things start to click in and make sense. And that's just because they were operating at a different frequency. And so, and were given different lenses to look through. And so the way that they perceived and saw the world was very different than maybe the community that they grew up in, or their friends, their family, and so forth. So when we spiritually awaken, it's super exciting because it's all of these ahas happen and we start to find our place. And what happens is we're kind of, from that point, we're shifting out of the third dimensional bandwidth of frequency, which is just the bandwidth of frequency that our energy operates in. So we're shifting out of the third dimension and we go into the fourth dimension, and we're fully navigating all of the different layers of the fourth dimension. So this is where we get really into the goddess stuff, the starseed stuff, might really get into conspiracy theories. We're just navigating all of it. And what tends to happen is when we're in this shift is we end up losing people. Our relationships with those that didn't awaken with us shifts, because then we almost feel like they don't understand us even more. And so we tend to surround ourselves with spiritual people only, or conscious people only. And so it can be a very, very painful time because, long-term friendships start to dissolve. You may feel even more alienated from your family. You may feel even more like the black sheep or the psychedelic sheep, whichever you want to look at it. So what ends up happening is that though it's like we've found our belonging, we've found people that are like us, and that's all we want to do is surround ourselves with these people and have these conscious conversations. It's actually like another means of separation. And the whole thing about spirituality is becoming one with God, becoming one with our own personal connection to source, spirit, God, creator, however you want to say it. And unity consciousness, like the world coming together in harmony. That's kind of like some of the ethics or the code or mission statements of the spiritual community. But when we're in this fourth dimensional place with all of this different information, we actually tend to separate ourselves even more. We see a divide between the awakened and the unawakened, conscious and the unconscious, the collective and the conscious community. We end up still taking that separation with us and using it almost as armor around us, where it's like we don't really want to go really deep into conversations that aren't really on the same path as us. And so we end up alienating ourselves even more from, the people we grew up with, our family, our communities. And so, we find our home in this fourth dimensional place for a while, but the thing is we are continuing to evolve. We're continuing to ascend in bandwidth of frequency. And what happens is once you get through all of the fourth dimensional stuff, where you've gone through all the truth seeking, you feel like you've just spent so much time and energy there, you tend to kind of feel a bit lost coming out of that. And that's because you are hitting the fifth dimensional bandwidth of frequency, that you're about to shift out of the fourth dimensional bandwidth where all of this spiritual community stuff is operating at. You're about to click into that fifth dimensional, that higher vibrational awareness, which is where it's like it's just God, it's just source, that's all it is, and it simplifies it. So what ends up happening is when we hit that bandwidth of frequency, suddenly we start to take off this spiritual armor that we've been kind of like protecting ourselves from the collective or the unconscious community, and we recognize that there is no separation. And we end up kind of like returning back to ourselves as like more fully integrated in our higher self embodiment and our soul alignment and our connection with God. And we no longer see the communities, the different communities and their belief systems as right and wrong or better than the other and so forth. We just kind of see it as like an ocean of equality. And we no longer feel that separation between us and our family, us and our friends that we were friends with before we awoke. And it can actually be a really, really beautiful time of like feeling like really recognizing where you've been separating yourself and feeling like you're returning back to yourself, but you're feeling a lot more whole than what you were going into that fourth dimensional realm. But it can be very, very confusing because suddenly all of that stuff that you thoroughly navigated in the spiritual community in the fourth dimensional realm of the star seeds, the goddess stuff, maybe the conspiracy stuff, all of these things all of a sudden no longer feel good in your body. There's no resonance. But you've very strongly identified with these topics, and it can feel very confusing and like a huge sense of loss and grief. And so this is where my latest Offering Soul series is coming in to hold you in this transition. Basically, Soul series is a 6-week group immersion to bring you back home to yourself. Because once you like fully navigate that 4D realm and you're ready to begin to shift into those higher states of awareness where it is just all God and that's just it and it's just a lot more simple, you need to be held in that, because there is a huge dissolving and purification that takes place. And it can feel like you're unplugging yourself from all of these different narratives and matrices, and you can feel quite raw and vulnerable. So Soul Series is to support you in that bridge over to that 5D and beyond realms, to hold you in the emotional unraveling that can take place as you've starting to feel like you're just no longer resonating with a lot of the spiritual community talk. So if you feel like this is exactly what you are needing for that next stage of your evolution, then I encourage you to take a look at the page, feel if it's in resonance with you, shoot me a message, we can talk about it to see if this is the right fit for you to support you in that next level, into that full alignment with your soul self and just simplifying all of these truths that you've picked up along the way and just refining and clarifying to get to your own truth, your own soul's truth. And it's such a breath of fresh air to come back to yourself after spending months, maybe years, navigating all of these other realms. And that's not to make these other realms wrong at all. You know, it's just that you just might not resonate with them anymore, but you're still seeking that spiritual connection. You're wanting to go deeper. And so it's basically, Soul Series is to support you from looking outside of yourself, from tapping into all these other different fields for your answers, for your healing, and to just come back home to yourself, to your own unique connection with God, Source, Spirit, Creator, whatever you want to say, and your own unique connection with your soul, dropping into your heart and finding your home in that, being home in that, and allowing that to be your navigator, your compass moving forward. So if you are at this place where, you have thoroughly navigated all of the fourth dimensional realms, all the goddess circles, all of it, and you're to the place that you feel spiritually fatigued, I honor you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Know that your energy went into that dimension so fully and navigated it so fully because you had work to do there. Our souls agreed to go into that realm to clean things up, to explore, to do our own healing. And ultimately, that's all pathways to our own self-realization, our own pathway to God. For myself, I would not be on live here saying the word God had I not fully navigated all of that realms and unpacked my God trauma to be able to get to the point to feel safe to reclaim that word and reclaim what God is to me. And that's why I still so highly honor and revere the teachings and the healings around the divine feminine, divine masculine, because the divine masculine gave me a safe place to unpack my God trauma, to come into a beautiful relationship with the Father, with the provider, with the man, so that next step in my evolutionary journey was reclaiming God, reclaiming that personal connection to God. So yeah, it can get really crazy out there in the spiritual community. And once you start to kind of come out of a lot of that other stuff, it can feel very, very confusing. And I honestly wouldn't have been able to get through it without the support that I had, to hold me as everything was dissolving. And, once it all dissolves, then you can start, and once you're fully plugged into yourself, centered in yourself, then you can start to put your hands and your feelers back into some of those other things. If you still really resonate with that starseed stuff, bring it back in. If you still want to, talk to Sekhmet and Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary, bring that back in. But it's important to give yourself that break of not taking in anything and just coming back home to yourself, simplifying it and fully anchoring into your own light, your own truth. And then from there, beginning to branch out again. So I'm going to drop in the comments the link for you to check out Soul Series, a 6-week group immersion. Spots are already filling up, and we start the second week of April. So yeah, I'm very excited about it. I love you all. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and we'll chat soon.